Hello, everyone. This is Maryann here, and you're listening to Random Sage with Maryann from Revealing Light. Thank you to all my listeners who gave me that very, very kind feedback on my last week's podcast, which was all about the art of divination. It was all about taking a deep dive into imagery, into perception, into creativity, but also into intuition and clairvoyance, and also looking at how all that comes together in the tarot. So if you don't, if you haven't listened to that yet, you might want to take a look at it. It's on Apple, Spotify, the various channels, and I also have a YouTube podcast channel as well, Random Sage Podcast. Okay, so today I want to look at something a little bit more deeper. Well, I don't know about deeper, a little bit more difficult than using our intuitive and clairvoyant abilities and our psychic senses. I want to talk about our humanity. That phrase, I am only human, is often used as a fallback, really, isn't it? When something miserable happens, when we fail miserably in our lives, when we get ourselves into those really sticky situations, sometimes when we think, I should have known better. Or sometimes when we think, where on earth did that come from? How on earth did I get myself into that situation? Those times when our relationships are up and down, they're failing, they're succeeding, they're difficult, they're frustrating, they're time-consuming, they're diabolical, they can be diabolical, and they can also be very loving. I'm only human. I think we should take out the only and just replace it with I am human, because I think to be human is to be magnificent. To be able to take all of that, all that's thrown at us on this earthly life, and survive it and succeed and to learn from it. There are sometimes, though, when we don't know how to live and we don't know how to love. And sometimes, tragically, when we don't know how to die. This is the difficult stuff I want to talk about today. We've all seen a loved one pass away. We've all been round that bedside. We've all had those dysfunctional situations within our families. We've all had seen what can be really tragic human relationships spiral downwards. We've all seen the news, those stories on the news where the hermit that lived in the house for 60 years and hadn't been seen for the last decade passes away, has been there for the last 3 years, not found by anyone, and there's rubbish and squalor everywhere. How did we get to that stage? How did we get to the point where we didn't deal with what we should have dealt with? How do we get to that stagnating point where the dysfunction is much easier to ignore than to do anything about? It's what it means to be human, to confront all of this in varying degrees throughout our lifetimes, even if it's as simple as not decluttering your house or not straightening out your finances when you should. We let things go. And we get defeated. We bow our heads and we say it's all too hard. I am human. I am human. What does that mean? Yes, it does mean to fail sometimes, but it also means something greater. It means that we often learn from our mistakes. We confront the darkest of situations. It's always darkest before the dawn. How many times have you heard someone say that? We confront those dark situations, the grief, the loss, the love loss, the betrayal, the failings, the human failings. We confront all of those, and out of the ashes, we see the spark of our divinity. And we're able to reach down with that Herculean effort, half man, half God. Reach into those ashes and get that spark of light and allow it to drift off into a new horizon to give us a new beginning. And along the way, we evolve, we move forward, we learn, we grow, and we do what we came here to do. We don't give up. We find that spark, some call it hope, that divinity, that light, and we follow that light. And we find that there's a new way forward. And we see that way forward. Through the darkness, we see the way forward. And we follow that. We follow that pathway. That's illuminated. We illuminated it. And yes, we did get help from the universe, because that's also what it means to be human. It means to be divine within and to connect with the divine around us. And we see that spark and we follow it and we create a new day. And at some point, before we saw that spark, we asked ourselves, what were we creating? It's always darkest before the dawn. For those out there that are struggling at the moment, I'd encourage you to ask yourself that question. What am I creating for myself? I am human. Yes, it is human to make mistakes and fail, but it's also human to rise and to find that spark of divinity and follow and grow and evolve. Around the time that I'm releasing this podcast, we've got a full moon in Sagittarius, and I've done a pretty full reading on that on my other channel, Revealing Light Tarot, Astrology and Spirituality on YouTube. But I just want to touch on that Sagittarius full moon, because I think if we look at what's going on in our humanity at the moment, in our world, as we confront wars, we confront technology that's moving so fast that we're lost. The growth of AI, the rapid growth of AI, get on board or you'll fall behind. The dangers of AI, artificial intelligence that learns as it goes, as we race toward a future without thinking about our humanity. The full moon in Sagittarius on the 3rd, 4th of June, regardless of where you are, or depending on where you are in the world, is all about a culmination of what we've created. And within that, we can see the misery, the conditions that exist all over the world, which are tragic in some cases. The deaths, the dying, the wars, the suffering, the poverty, the cruelty, the barbarianism. We can also then turn and see that spark of divinity also existing in humanity. The volunteers that go into the war zones and help people, the good and true policies and programs that take us forward, the coming together and the unity between countries, the ideal of diplomacy, which is still, thankfully, in action in our world. And Sagittarius is a mutable sign, which means it's the spark that finds the future, that finds somewhere to go. It's also optimistic, future-oriented. It's about higher knowledge, philosophy, asking ourselves those tough questions and learning from the answers. Ruled by Jupiter, expansion, the great benefic, luck and fortune. Hunkered down, I should say, hunkering down in the sign of Taurus, the fixed sign of Taurus, I think the most determined sign in our zodiac. So we've got anchors here at the moment in a volatile world, but we've also got those sparks of divinity within ourselves and within humanity. When I say I am only human, I'm going to take the only out and I'm going to say I am human. I am here to learn, to succeed, sometimes to fail, but to find that spark of divinity and evolve and ascend. That's the great opportunity that we're given through being human. It's no small world, and it should never have the only in it, because that's a cop-out, isn't it? So I've got a question here for my cards today. I always ask a big question at the end of the podcast. And I'm going to say, some people would doubt it. Some people say we're not evolving, we're regressing. Who thought that fascism would come back into the world? Who thought that we'd start to ban books? Who thought that we would stigmatize and ostracize and isolate those that are different from ourselves, that we can't accept? We thought we were over all that, didn't we? Well, the Sagittarius full moon or the conditions of our time get us to see what we're creating, whether it's in our personal life or anywhere else. What are you creating? And if so, are we going in the right direction? Are we evolving? I'm using the Night and Sun tarot. Let's take a look. Is humanity evolving? That's a big question. It'll be interesting to see what the cards will bring forward. Is humanity evolving? Evolving through tragedy is what I'm seeing, which lights that spark of hope and of divinity within us all, within our humanity. Are we evolving? Is humanity evolving? We are beginning something new. Again, after the culmination of the full moon in Sagittarius, we get a new moon in Gemini. We get to think about what we're creating. It's an inevitability that we will lose along the way, but it's also an inevitability that we'll win some too. I think this is a time of change, and it's a very karmic phase. I was only thinking that the other day, a karmic phase in our evolution of humanity. We had the wars last century. We have a different set of conditions now, but they're just as challenging. We have wars ongoing in so many places around the world. And I think there is in order to evolve, I think there is a judgment that we're making at this time. Some will pass the test and some won't. Some will retreat in terms of their evolutionary pathway. Some are retreating. It's inevitable that some will go backwards. But then we get to learn, because that's why we're here. It's said that the earth is the most dense, difficult place. Reincarnation believers suggest that earth is the most difficult place to reincarnate on. Those that retreat from what's in our DNA is to evolve and move forward and do more than just survive, but to thrive. Those that retreat will find themselves locked out from a certain kind of abundance. And I want to preface that by saying that when you live spiritually, when you live in the higher realm, then you manifest those things that come to you, particularly the earthly abundance. When you can find that spark and create something new and not stagnate. Are we evolving? I talk a lot about living spiritually is to learn to love the self, learn to love yourself. It's I think the greatest, if you want to use the word sin, the greatest sin on this earth, not to love yourself, not to put enough faith and hope in yourself that you can't see, you can't reach into the ashes and take that spark of divinity, which leads you to the new, which leads you to miracles. When you thought all else was failing, are we evolving? Yes, some are growing stronger and some are regressing. And I think it's becoming, with the judgment card there, it's becoming pretty clear which side of the coin people are on. One more card. We get the High Priestess. There is are we evolving? I particularly want to say that there is a draw toward using your intuition and your inner knowledge, your gut knowing a lot more these days than probably you've ever done. It's like when we see things and we go straight away, yep, we know that is BS, if I can use that word. And we know what's true and we know what's false. And those that don't are falling behind. And we get the Magician manifestation. We're moving into a greater spiritual time. And yes, through tragedy. And yes, through seeing all the wounds. But if we can persist, and that's what the Sagittarian full moon tells us, if we can persist to bring things to a close that need to be closed, to be ended, to be culminated, to be tidied up, if we can persist and reach in and find that spark of divinity, the earth is at our feet, because we have the Magician card, the manifestation, and we will do it quickly. There is a quickening in the evolution through the evolution of humanity through its suffering. Okay, that's the podcast for today. I felt I should tackle a particularly difficult subject because things are difficult for some people. We can't always just paper over that, because we need to look deeply at these things and find those sparks, those currents that take us forward. Thank you for joining me today on the Random Sage podcast. I will be back, hopefully lighter, next week. Bye for now.